This time on News Chat, I'm making up my own news. Now, you may have heard about this live-action pandemic legacy roleplay that we're all living through. Well, so have opportunistic Kickstarter creators, and today we are going to review some of their projects, and more importantly ask, how can you make a respectful game about the coronavirus? Not necessarily you, but the general you. Games have a unique power to explore systems, and there are a lot of systems in our world being affected by the coronavirus. Systems that might be ripe for gamifying. The search for a cure, the government-level sourcing of necessary equipment, the management of hospitals, and the challenges faced by essential workers. But people are dying! This is a serious deal. World-changing. And with subject matter this loaded comes a huge burden of responsibility on the game creator to treat their subject matter sensitively and intelligently. Have these creators done their due diligence? Corona Battle Against Covid-19 crams both names of the disease into its title for maximum searchability.
I like the skull on the box. That's nice touch, very sensitive.
This is a game being put together in someone's garage from acrylic pieces and 2 cotton bags.
Design may vary from generic black bag.
Plus there's a laser-cut wooden box, if you pump for the deluxe version, which contains twice the components.
4 cotton bags!
What is this? Why do you have 2 identical pictures of 2 bags? Do you not own 4 bags needed to test this at its max player count? Let's not distance ourselves from the truth here. These games have been thrown together in a couple of months, under conditions that might make playtesting a little hard to do.
Hey, it comes with a youth-friendly shipping, just like the coronavirus.
There is technically a game in here, in that you do have some decisions to make. Ignore it or report it. You have factories, and you can decide what they're producing in a given round. Stuff to defend against the virus, stuff to attack the virus.
Like toilet paper.
I'm cured! Or they just make money, which you can use to buy more factories, engine building, or the antidotes you need to win the game. Oh, if only we just thought to buy antidotes! Oh. Terrible science is a hallmark of these projects. Antidotes cure poisons, not viruses. There are no magic cures. There is no going on the offensive. You don't battle against COVID-19, you survive it. Or not. Games don't need to be 100% scientifically accurate most of the time. But when you attach yourself to a real-world theme, you have some obligation to represent it fairly and accurately, especially when dealing with an ongoing public health crisis, ridden with misinformation and bad actors. Don't propagate bad science.
When I saw the thumbnail for this, I saw the board with what looked like a virus covered in receptors and thought, hey, was this going to be an actual look at some science for how to fight a virus?
No.
Upon closer inspection, we have a roll and move game, in the shape of a virus.
This time though, the aim is to get yourself a vaccine, though it is entirely unclear who you represent. Are you ordinary people?
In which case, why is every node a different country?
Any concept of movement at all for you and I seems poorly thought through, so maybe you're the scientists researching around the world, but then why do you have 4 pawns who individually need to make the loop? It's all a bit tenuous, but actually the stronger abstraction helps it. If you don't say something, you can't be wrong. But this being a game about the coronavirus, they had to throw in some kind of jokey rule about social distancing. If you land on another player's piece, then, oh no, it's off to the hospital for a test. It's this casual attitude to the whole situation that makes my blood boil.
Take a short break from your everyday worries by playing a game where you can be sent to hospital, and turn your worries into fun! There are 2 kinds of games. One, the rarer, has a message or wants to examine a system in a meaningful way. The other is intended purely as fun escapism, and while I admire the former, neither is objectively better.
The majority of these games are not trying to say anything. They're intended purely as escapist fun. But if you're going to do that, why make the game about the thing everyone's trying to escape? If you want to make escapist fun, don't make it about the coronavirus. Or to put it another way, make your game meaningful. How? Well, that's probably a topic for an entire video series, but one way to approach it is to give the players clear avatars in the game world and build mechanics that explore the real interactions between those avatars and the systems of that world. The action of the virus is then a system that affects the other, more typical, recognisable systems. See? Isn't that easy?
Game design solved.
Deliverirus is about being a delivery driver in the midst of a suspiciously flu-like viral outbreak. Get it? Delivery virus. But also, deliver us. Like us, or deliver us from this virus. Oh my god, is this the best named game of 2020? No. Sadly, that title belongs to
D6. Dungeons, Dudes, Dames, Danger, Dice and Dragons.
I'm sorry, you definitely can't defeat that degree of alliteration. Delivirus is a pretty simple card game. Draw cards hoping to gather all the elements you need for a delivery, which sounds a little like creating your online shopping list using a random number generator.
Good news, love! Looks like tinned herrings and burger cheese for tea.
But buried within the resource deck are various symptom cards that steadily add up until you need to take a test.
Which is almost a meaningful commentary on the dangers being faced by essential workers day in, day out. Symptoms also spread around to the other players at the table, just like they will if you get together to actually play this game. But I have to wonder whether how players will experience the game won't undercut the message.
Consider, if I draw a symptom card, but see it's one I've already got, that symptom gets passed to the player to my left. And what do? I cheer, because I thought I'd got something bad, but instead it has hit my opponent.
If I collect all 4 symptoms, I have to take a test, which will be randomly positive or negative, resulting in missing my next turn to take another test, and so on, until I get a negative one, which is bad enough from the awful miss-a-turn mechanics. But what is everyone else doing while you're drawing positive tests? Laughing at you. If you point and laugh at someone getting a Covid-19 in real life, you're a sociopath. But that's the natural inclination of players, laughing at your opponent's misfortunes. It's a lot of the fun of this kind of game. I don't know how to solve this conflict. Players will make a competitive game fun through banter, but in this case that competitive behaviour will break any thematic immersion the game has managed to create, thereby damaging any meaningful commentary. That's an essential thing to consider. Like, I don't want to say that this totally eliminates competitive games from the space, but they're much harder to get right. I mean, the banter problem comes to the fore when you have strong elements of negative player interaction, like take that. Where negative effects need to be included, you could mitigate it by having those happen to all players simultaneously, or maybe with global effects, or ensuring the difference between the worst and least hit is relatively small. Like a Euro management approach would probably work quite well. And of course, the other solution is to make your game cooperative. God, it's all such... Wait!
That's like a real game.
What have you done?
Clinic was a 2014 game about running a hospital, re-released in deluxified form last year. It's pretty well respected, and so is the designer.
So hey, hospitals! They're in the news right now. The Covid-19 edition is an expansion, which at least means there's a chance of it being reasonably designed. It's much easier to develop an expansion than a whole game from scratch. It seems like it might even be fulfilling our 3 thrown together criteria. Clinic throws patients at you in the expectation of treatment. The Covid-19 expansion ensures some of those will always be infected with the disease, making them harder than normal to treat, and you'll get a certain number of additional infections from staff and other patients simply being in the hospital. This illness spreads. Doctors will end up needing to be treated, and if you can't treat them, will die. Nurses and orderlies can require quarantining. Elderly patients with COVID just die. It's pulling in elements of what is really happening in our hospitals. Not perfectly, but pretty close within the restrictions of a board game, and in particular an existing board game. It's already gut-punchingly meaningful, giving players cause to extrapolate the game issues they're managing to what's happening just down the road. But then it goes kind of one better in setup, of all places.
You'll choose at the start a rate of transmission and what degree the local population is obeying lockdown rules, from fully locked down to sightseeing at Blarney Castle.
This is simply adjusting the difficulty, but it is making a direct statement on how your behaviour in the real world is affecting the real crisis. AKA, wear a mask.
You're even building the hospital, which might once upon a time have seemed ridiculous, but we've seen that in China's response, and in Britain's less flashy Nightingale hospitals.
Finally, it keeps players from undercutting the seriousness of the situation by making what was once a competitive game cooperative. And I think there's something valuable to learn here too. Part of why I feel so much more comfortable with this game over the others is that it gives the players some emotional space. You are faceless hospital managers. Your character isn't directly under threat, but any feeling person will still be affected by seeing those you're responsible for falling sick. It seems to walk a line between being meaningful and without falling into exploitation. While of course the best way to give your players emotional space is to not release your game in the middle of the thing your game is about. Finding those extra layers of abstraction can really help. But too abstract is then just using the name for its attention-grabbing purposes, which, as we've covered, is explicitly not cool. That said, I'm in the lucky position of not really knowing anyone providing primary care in hospitals, so I have that emotional space. But others might not. That's my privilege here.
Which is often the problem with the rest of these games. They're coming from the privileged positions of those who see themselves above, or at least unaffected by, this outbreak.
I mean, how out of touch do you have to be to create a game about delivery drivers catching a disease that you are going to manufacture and have delivered to people? In the case of Clinic, you had a game where to play it in its original form right now would just see players calling the abstract diseases COVID anyway, but not getting any meaning from that process at all. This expansion offers an official way to incorporate Covid-19 in a meaningful and pretty respectful way. It's like suddenly how Pandemic is not a game I want to play anymore. So I'm glad Z-Man hasn't pushed out a totally tone-deaf new edition set in the country with the highest total deaths in the world. Oh, for God's sake. So overall, I think I'm going to grade Clinic COVID a B+. It's almost as good a treatment of the subject as you could hope for in the moment, but I'd expect people with friends in the medical community to be a bit put off by it. Delivirus? I'm going to give a C- to. There's some real meaning in there, but also some serious issues, and wait, what's that?
Start player is the last person who was sick.
D-. Kill COVID, I will generously give an E, if only because I want to clearly delineate the awfulness of Corona battle against COVID-19 with a solid F. And that is a look at a bunch of long-finished Kickstarter projects trying to capitalise on the awful situation the world has found itself in this year. I do think board games should be a medium capable of exploring and analysing difficult and complex issues. That's how it can establish itself as an art form. The coronavirus pandemic is one of the defining moments of our lifetimes. All mediums will be scrambling to find ways to explore it in the years to come. So too should board games. These early attempts are opportunities to learn, mostly how not to do it. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and to any budding designers out there, I hope there have been some useful lessons. Because if you've not learned them, you will be locked down.